Marvel movies are a big old massive, huge part of the movie industry today. I know that that's not a groundbreaking statement, all grounds are still intact after I've said that, but it's the truth. In terms of movies that get people talking and get people to go out to the theater, I mean, they're at the top of the list. Quite literally actually, thanks to Avengers Endgame, now the highest grossing movie of all time. Since they're so undeniably popular and appealing, such a big part of today's culture, people's feathers get rustled when other people, feathered or otherwise, say that they don't like these movies. A lot of Marvel superfans will pile onto these people, calling them contrarian and many other less sophisticated words. I've seen the term doo-doo head tossed around on Twitter, that's gotta hurt. With certain fans reacting that way when a normal everyday person criticizes Marvel, it's no surprise that they were shooken to their core recently when Martin Scorsese criticized Marvel. One of the most beloved directors of all time, the man behind Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, Raging Bull, The Wolf of Wall Street, and most importantly, the man who played Sykes in Shark Tale. They gave the fish Scorsese eyebrows. They did that. The main takeaway from what Scorsese said about Marvel movies is that he doesn't think that they are cinema, and yet another legendary director, Francis Ford Coppola, commented on it too. He said Martin Scorsese was being too polite and that Marvel movies are in fact despicable. Today, I want to dive into what Martin Scorsese said about Marvel, how people reacted to it, and what the real message behind that statement seems to be. So first of all, let's start with some context for the Marvel isn't cinema statement. This happened while he was being interviewed by Empire magazine about his movie The Irishman, the aptly named film about a man who is in fact Irish. The subject of MCU movies came up for reasons, and he said this, quote, "I don't see them. I tried, you know, but that's not cinema. Honestly, the closest I can think of them, as well made as they are, with actors doing the best they can under the circumstances, is theme parks. It isn't the cinema of human beings trying to convey emotional, psychological experiences to another human being." So that's it. That's the quote that launched a million Twitter rants. And first things first, I'd just like to say that, hey, he called them theme parks. Theme parks are awesome. I love them. You eat some cotton candy, you have a fun ride on a roller coaster, you throw up some cotton candy. What's not to like? I mean, if he was trying to insult Marvel movies, I think that's actually more of a compliment. But I don't think his intention was to actually really insult or compliment Marvel movies necessarily, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but people reacted like the not cinema and the theme park comments were blasphemous insults. James Gunn, who directed the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, wrote a huge post on Instagram about the comments. Essentially, he framed them as kind of a generational issue and a misunderstanding of the genre. He talks about back in the day raving to a great uncle of his about Star Wars when it came out, to which his great uncle responded, "I saw that when it was called 2001, and boy was it boring." Talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey, if you didn't get that reference by the way. Pretty freaking different from Star Wars. Todd Phillips, who's like obsessed with Martin Scorsese, as evidenced by the 15,000 homages to him in The Joker, he also commented on the whole Marvel's not cinema thing. He said that his only issue with Scorsese's comments is that he's lumping a lot of movies into one thing. Like, it wouldn't be fair to lump Goodfellas and Casino in with some other gangster movies that are crappy but exist in the same genre. So yeah, the point that Gunn and Phillips seem to be making is that you can't lump all these movies into a single pile and dismiss them all as being the same thing. And that's actually perfectly evidenced by the superhero movies that Gunn and Phillips they themselves directed. Now granted, Joker obviously isn't in the MCU, but it is technically a superhero movie. Like, if a streaming service had a category called superhero movies, you'd definitely see Guardians of the Galaxy and Joker in it, and you wouldn't think that was crazy. An interesting thing about Scorsese's comment is that he says he doesn't watch Marvel movies, but that he's tried. And that kind of begs the question, well, which ones did he see? You know, when did he stop watching? Because a big criticism of Marvel has been that they're very formulaic movies, but that seems to be something that they've been consciously trying to veer away from since like 2014. So if Martin Scorsese watched like Thor: The Dark World and Captain America: The First Avenger and then dismissed the MCU forever, well, you might be able to see why he formed the opinion that he did. This is actually something that Marvel's super producer Kevin Feige touched upon when he reacted to Scorsese's comments. First off, he said that everybody has a different definition of cinema. He also explained that, yeah, although movies in the MCU are interconnected, a part of the same thing, a lot of them are actually other genres disguised as superhero movies. That makes them capable of offering up new experiences for audiences, but also keeping them grounded in a world that's familiar to them. The Ant-Man movies are heist films, the Spider-Man movies are coming-of-age tales, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, political thriller, you get the idea. So yeah, obviously a lot of people took issue with Martin Scorsese saying that Marvel isn't cinema, and it's an understandable knee-jerk reaction to have. Like I said, the statement lumps a lot of different movies into a single thing, and it also uses a word that people have like various subjective definitions for to qualify those movies. The definition of cinema is motion pictures, the art of moving images. So are Marvel movies motion pictures? Of course they are. They're pictures that are in motion. Are they art? Well, I think that's what people took issue with, because maybe they are and maybe they aren't, nobody's really to say. But one thing's for sure, it doesn't sound good to be called not art. It definitely sounds vaguely insulting, because I think that sometimes certain people use the word art in like a condescending way, the sense that they imply that like art is for smart people, and so if you like something that's not art, you're not a smart person. So this statement from Scorsese was just the perfect quote to stir up trouble online. Vague enough that people can argue about it non-stop with everybody and nobody being right at the same time. It's the stuff that the internet of today is built upon. But the actual sentiment behind what Scorsese said doesn't seem to just be about whether or not these things are art. There's a deeper frustration going on. And in fact, after all the backlash because of his comments, he wrote an article in the New York Times to explain this whole sentiment a little further. It seems like it's not really just about the movies, but more about the state of the industry and the effect that the success of the movies has had on things. He explains that everything in those movies is officially sanctioned because it can't be any other way. He says that that's the nature of modern film franchises. Market researched, audience tested, vetted, modified, re-vetted, and re-modified until they're ready for consumption. And that's pretty undeniable. As much as it sounds like filmmakers are given a lot of freedom by Marvel, these are movies that are designed to have massive, widespread appeal. You gotta hit those international markets because they have money too, and Disney would like to have that money in their bank account. There's a reason that Iron Man 3 had an extended cut in China with a bunch of Chinese characters helping Tony out. That's so it would make money in that market. So that seems to really be what he's getting at with the Marvel isn't cinema statement. He splits it up quite nicely. He says that there's worldwide audiovisual entertainment, and then there's cinema. And the broader point he makes is that because these massive worldwide audiovisual entertainment franchises are what dominate the box office, that can, quote, marginalize and even belittle the existence of the other. It's hard to get movies on the big screen because people only go to the big screen to see blockbuster movies these days. And because people only go to the movies to see those kinds of movies, well, those are the kinds of movies that big studios want to make for worldwide distribution. It's a feedback loop. And honestly, that's probably just gonna be more and more common. Like, stuff is happening that's gonna make it worse. The Department of Justice officially filed a motion recently to terminate the Paramount decrees. If that sounds like rubbish, it's cause it's a law from the 1940s. The Paramount decrees were put in place in the 1940s to restrict movie studio distributors' control over exhibition. What that means is that without these rules, a studio could do something called block booking, essentially forcing theater chains to agree to show multiple movies from that studio on their screens. Like, hey, you want to show Avengers Endgame? Well, you have to agree to show all these other movies too. Just fill up every single screen you have with Marvel. Essentially, without the Paramount decrees, studios can control theaters. This is something that Disney's already been sneakily doing in certain ways, asking theaters to charge people more for their movies, getting them to play them on a certain number of screens. Without the Paramount decrees, it's going to make it virtually impossible for independent movies to be shown on the big screen, because the big studios will control those screens. So you could kind of see why Martin Scorsese is frustrated about Marvel movies. In his article, he says he wishes The Irishman, which he made for Netflix, could be shown on more big screens. It's how filmmakers want their projects to be shown, and Scorsese's not alone in his frustration. Here's a quote from another director. "Even we are finding that it's becoming increasingly difficult as the months pass. Not as the years pass, as the months pass. It is a tough market to make a darker, character-driven movie. It's not what the market was was even 2 years ago. And which director said that? Joe Russo, who co-directed Avengers Endgame. That's a Marvel movie. If you didn't know, Marvel made that movie. It's tough out there, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, thanks for watching that video. I hope you liked it. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of the whole Martin Scorsese Marvel isn't cinema thing. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. And as always, check back soon for a new video.